voice. I'm losing it a little bit. So, United States politics, I think we all agree, is a little bit of a mess right now. And part of it is because of this kindergarten level of political discourse that we've arrived at, where you're either right or you're wrong. There's no in between. But rather than talk so much about either specifically how he got elected or what led to that moment, or whether he's actually the problem, what I want to talk with you guys a little bit more about is what is the landscape that allowed this to even happen? Because I think that gets overlooked. And so, first of all, a lot of people don't realize that he was one of the 2 least popular candidates ever to run for president in the United States. So somehow through this whole process, we ended up with the least popular candidates that we could have throughout history. And what is that about? Is it a reaction to this crash in 2008 where the executives responsible weren't held to account? Is it the 40 years of stagnant wage growth for low and middle income earners? Perhaps that's what's leading to now in America, only 4% of Americans, just 4%, have a great deal of confidence in Congress. It's so bad that a new study says that America is no longer even considered a full democracy. And so what I want you to think about is adding all these things together. And what you get is not just one thing, it is a system failure. And so with this presentation, I'm going to show you 3 lines. That's basically, how did this happen? What are we doing about it? And how can you help? Also, there's going to be 4 pictures of Macaulay Culkin. All right, so here's your first line. And I want you to just look at this line. We'll do a little participation. I want you to just picture an issue that really matters to you. Something that you wish the government were fixing more rapidly or doing better with. And just picture your issue sitting on this line. This comes from a Princeton University study. They looked at 1,800 public opinion polls over the course of 20 years to see how public opinion correlates to the laws that Congress does or doesn't pass. And we took their data and we put it on this chart. So here on the horizontal axis, we've got public support for any idea. And on the vertical axis, we've got the likelihood of that idea becoming a law in the US. And when you plot the data for the average American, you get a line that looks like this. And remember, there's your issue sitting on that line. So if you're an average American and there is 0 support for your idea, you're the only person who thinks this is a good idea, there's a 30% chance that Congress is going to turn this idea into a law. Conversely, if there's 100% support for your idea, it's the most popular thing that's ever happened in humanity, there's still just a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass a law based on that idea. Again, if you're an average income earner in America. Princeton determined that the preferences of the average American appear to have a minuscule, near 0, statistically non-significant impact on public policy. And I hope that when you hear that, you feel like this. But I hope that it's not just like a laugh line, haha reaction, but that actually you want to understand what's going on. So let's look at it. Consider that politicians after election will spend up to 70% of their time raising funds for re-election. Why? In some of the most expensive races, you'd have to raise $40,000 every single day for 6 years to win re-election. Only 0.05% of Americans are giving more than $10,000 in any election cycle, and so you can very quickly see how politicians have become totally dependent on this tiny, tiny slice of the electorate. Meanwhile, the people who write our laws are generally lobbyists, and they're the same lobbyists that bundle donations to give to those same politicians. We have a 2-party duopoly in America. You get to vote for Democrats or Republicans. Those are your 2 choices. But look at this chart. You can see that over the last 20 years, people have been leaving the major parties in droves, and now nearly half of Americans associate as independents. Those that are still associated with the major parties, about half of them in each party are disappointed with the party, and yet we have just 2 choices. Then we have gerrymandering, of course, where politicians get to take out a scalpel and choose which voters they want to vote for them by drawing maps, computer-guided, around the voters they want and cutting out those that don't. Add these things together, we find out that 84% of races for the US House are uncompetitive when it gets to the general election, meaning by the time we get there, we already know which party is going to win, which means all of the competition is in the primaries, and it starts to explain how things have gotten so polarized because there's competition pushing each party further to the outside when primary voters come out. Okay, it's a lot. So this is the visual. There is a vast ring of influence around our elected officials. It is a corrupt system in which we, the people, have near 0 impact upon public policy. And I think, regardless of your opinions of America, it's kind of a sad state of affairs. But what we forget when we get into these technocratic conversations about how it all happened and who got elected is what we're experiencing because of this system. We waste trillions of dollars a year. Meanwhile, 1 in 5 children in America lives beneath the poverty line. Our healthcare is clearly not working for most Americans. That's obvious. We put more people in prison than China or Russia. And we're not doing enough to keep just obvious things like clean air and water for the next generation. We are a nation that needs help, and our nation was founded on the promise of self-governance. And instead, we have near zero impact. And it's not a good look. Okay, so the question is, how do we unrig this system? And we started by talking to some incredibly smart people, like Harvard professor Lawrence Lessig, Professor Zephyr Teachout. The infamous super lobbyist Jack Abramoff was like our inside guy who knows how the sausage is made, and the F got cut off on his name there. We talked to them. We said, can we pass a law that would fight this corruption and fix our broken elections? And they helped us craft something called the American Anti-Corruption Act. And I'm not going to get into the details of it, but the idea is it undoes this ring of influence and reinstates we the people as the rightful influence over government. If you want to learn more about it, go to anticorruptionact.org. You can read all the provisions there. What's important for this talk is for you to know that when we poll on these kinds of policies in the US, we see massive support across party lines. And so you might be thinking, well, wait, 9 out of 10 Americans support this. Why don't you just go to Congress and get this thing passed? But of course, on this issue, perhaps more so than even any other, it's like asking a fox to put a lock on the henhouse, right? It's the system that got them in power is the one we're asking them to fix. It just doesn't work. And so what we need is a plan that lets us go around Congress. And so what that means for us is passing these anti-corruption laws in cities and states all across America. And now every time I present or talk about this, people hear that and they give me this look. As if to say, well, wait, we're talking about the federal government and Congress and the presidency. How does passing state laws affect that? And so we're going to move to our second line. This one comes from a Bloomberg study that actually found that passing state laws can lead to the passage of federal change, and it's happened throughout American history. Here's what it looks like. These are states that gave women the right to vote. And when we get to the right side of the chart, that's federal victory. I'm going to show you it again, this time for interracial marriage. A few states are passing these laws, and this time watch that yellow line and watch what happens afterwards. A quick acceleration and then federal victory. We saw it recently with marriage equality. So here we are again, one state. We hit that yellow line, a quick acceleration. The study found that it was often a court decision or a grassroots campaign reaching maturity that triggers this rush of state activity that can lead to a change in federal law. And so that brings us to us, Represent Us. Represent Us is a grassroots movement. And what we do is bring together conservatives and progressives to pass anti-corruption laws all across America. And I want you guys to know that it's not the feel-good nature of bringing left and right together, or that that's our mantra. It's that actually that's the political strategy for how you win. Because America, like every country, is divided into segments. And when only one segment is working on fundamental change, they can't win. They don't have a majority. But when we can bring together the whole country behind policies that they support, then we have the power to win. And this isn't just some idea. Okay? These are our members all across America. These are regular people who take time at the end of their day after work to call their representatives, to get together, to fight for things, to work together to pass these laws. Because of them, we've been able to rack up more than 100 state and local victories across America. And that brings us back to the 2018 midterms. And I started by saying there was this blue wave. But one of the untold stories, and I think this is incredible, we call it the red, white, and blue wave, because why not? Okay, our movement made history in this election. There were more than 23 victories where states passed some of these laws that I talked about before. These are 5 states passing laws to put an end to gerrymandering, so politicians stop choosing their voters, and instead voters choose politicians. There were many states that passed automatic voter registration. So you no longer have to go register to vote, you're just registered, and you have to unregister if you don't want to vote. We had ethics and transparency laws passed in places like North Dakota and Alaska, traditionally conservative places. These are popular laws. And remember, this is all in service of marching towards that rush of state activity that will lead to a change in federal law. And so we have a lot of momentum. But the next step is to go bigger. And that brings us to our last line. And so right now, this is you on this side of the line. And usually when I'm talking to a group of people, I say, here's how you can help. We need you to introduce us to people that can really move the needle on this stuff. Maybe you've got brilliant ideas for how to take what we do and do it better. Or maybe you can offer financial support. But this group is a little different because you're the fashion industry, and I'm not going to be the first speaker to say this. I'm sure I won't be the last. But my background is actually in graphic design. I'm not a political person. I came out of graphic design and brand work and storytelling and moved on to do this because I found it was important. And when I was doing that work, I actually read an article about Pantone and how they forecast colors 2 years in advance. That's what they do. They say, here's going to be the color, and then it becomes the color, and it trickles everywhere. And I'm sure everybody in this room has influence on that as well. My point is, you guys are the people that shape culture. You are the ones that help people think what to think. And I think as much as the technical act of passing these laws is important for shifting what's wrong in America, so much is about the belief that we own our government, that we can make a change and that we can actually do something about it. And so rather than asking you for the kind of small things of like, give me an idea, or maybe you can pitch in a little bit, what I would ask of you as a group is to actually help us shape history, right? Like, take a chance, go from being on that side of the line, and cross it. And I assure you that if you do, things will get better. Thank you.